Welcome to our 5 on 5. I'm pleased to be joined today by U.S. Congressman Cliff Bentz. Congressman, thank you for joining us today.
It's great to be here.
So if the reports are true that 90% of Americans want expanded background checks on gun purchases, why can't something get passed?
I think the issue, as always, is, wait, before I go into that, my heart goes out to the folks in Texas. And so I want to make sure everyone knows how badly we feel for what happened there. And I'm sure your question is what can be done about it. And the short answer is we need to look at all types of solutions, but none of them, as far as I'm concerned, can interfere with our Second Amendment rights. So I'm happy to look at background checks as long as they don't interfere with our Second Amendment rights. We need to be really cognizant of the fact that we don't want to be trying to solve one problem while creating another.
Second, you talk about that, and obviously there's many ways you could argue something that might infringe on Second Amendment rights. The Trump administration bump stocks, for example, might be one of them. But what about a federal red flag law? 19 states have them, including Oregon, and for people who don't know, they allow police or family members to seek court orders and take guns away from people who may pose threats to themselves or others.
Right. Well, the question again is, do they interfere with our Second Amendment rights? That's going to be the standard I'll be applying to any of those concepts. And I'll be happy to go back and talk to my caucus members about what can be done, again, with adequate protection for our Second Amendment rights. And people use that, I use that phrase as shorthand for being able to defend yourself. And so I'm not anxious to make it more difficult to defend ourselves when we use one of these other solutions to these problems. So the question is, what impact will these changes have on our Second Amendment rights?
A lot of people talk about mental health in this debate, certainly something we've seen a lot of this past week. We're recording this on Memorial Day in advance of it airing on Tuesday. But wouldn't a red flag law or any laws potentially looking, more mental health resources, anything under that umbrella, be able to identify the people who use these for massacres like this?
So there was a Wall Street Journal editorial that went into different possibilities when it comes to identifying people that might be thinking about doing these kinds of things. And those kinds of approaches to stopping this type of horrid tragedy need to be explored carefully and then discussed carefully. Many of them involve rights of privacy, and we need to be cognizant of the impact on these other rights. But yes, we need to be doing something, and I pointed out that the proper thing to do right now that we don't need to wait for is making sure our schools are more secure. And in fact, asked my staff to look into where the monies are for that purpose and what schools are doing here in the state of Oregon to try to help.
I know you don't want to, as you say, infringe on anyone's Second Amendment rights, and I know you're an attorney, so when it comes to asking complicated questions that we're trying to cover right now, it can be complicated, shall we say. Are there any gun control measures that you can think of off the top of your head that's a wide berth for an answer, but that you would support?
Well, like you just said, that's an extremely complicated question, and I'm not going to blurt things out that may or may not be constitutional. The best approach that I can think of is for me to go back to Washington, D.C. and talk this over with those folks who are experts in that space, and then decide, based upon what constitutional folks have to say and others, the right thing to do. But I want to make it clear, I'm a Second Amendment candidate. I support the Second Amendment. And let's make sure that whatever we do is protective of those folks who want to defend themselves. And let's make sure that at the same time, while we're working our way through those complicated issues, we're making our schools safer.
I was looking earlier today, of course, congressmen and women like yourselves are all back home with visiting. And this is, of course, a huge topic. Senator Lindsey Graham, who's part of this bipartisan group, a Republican senator from South Carolina, was talking about incentivizing red flag laws. He said he didn't support it on a federal level. 19 states, as I said, have them. But Senator Graham was saying maybe more mental health resources for those states who do implement them. That's not gun control. This is a state-by-state issue. He said he wanted to keep it that way. Would something like that, as generic as I can make that question, would something like that appeal to you?
Yeah, well, let me make this clear. This area is extremely complicated. I am a lawyer, and I'm going to be extremely careful in how we approach any of these ideas. Senator Graham's a smart guy, lots of experience in this space, this federal space that's new to me, and I want to make sure whatever I do in it is consistent with that which I know my constituents want, and that is that their Second Amendment rights be protected. At the same time, we all want our kids safe, and that's why I'm suggesting and have suggested that we do our best to harden our schools and make sure that we're doing a better job protecting our kids.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We have much more to cover. Stay with us. Welcome back to our 5 on 5. Again, here with Congressman Cliff Bentz. Congressman, the House passed an emergency bill this month to address the nationwide formula shortage. You voted against it. Why?
There are actually two bills, and I voted for the second one, but the first one was some $20-some-odd million going to the Food and Drug Administration. The Food and Drug Administration's failures led to the formula shortage. So why, apparently the Democrats think that if you throw money at an agency that was failing, somehow things are going to get better, and they're not. And so the appropriate approach years ago should have been to make sure that the FDA is taking care of the safety of our food, and it has not been doing that. And in fact, a whistleblower last fall called out the shortcomings of the formula production at Abbott Labs, and the whistleblower was ignored by the FDA for 3 months. Why would we give more money to a failed agency? Let's figure out why they failed, why it failed, and then move forward.
I mentioned in part one of this interview that we were recording this on Memorial Day. It's airing on Tuesday. This is, I believe, the first time in 20 years that technically America hasn't been at war on Memorial Day. What does that mean to you?
Well, thank goodness our young men and women are not being put in any more in harm's way than happens as a result of being in the military. So it's a wonderful thing that we're not at war. It does give me an opportunity to thank all of those who are serving, and those, and just for a moment, remember those who lost their lives in service of our country. We owe them a huge debt.
Hear, hear. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.